This week, what motivates Freemasons? Nothing? Other Masons? Events? Well, we'll check out an article published all the way back in 1987 that talks a little bit about the importance of Masonic motivation. And it's not just your typical past master telling you to assign ritual parts. You've got some real inspiration coming your way. Then, we've also got a quick rundown of what happened at Masonic Con Kansas, a premier Masonic Con event happening in the Midwest that was totally free for the first time in history. What happened? What did we learn? And is it coming back? Well, of course it's coming back, but stay tuned to learn about the event itself. And lastly, we'll talk about the importance of preserving the meaning behind our Masonic symbols in a piece penned back in 1988. All this and more. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry. Here's your host, Brother Robert Johnson.
Welcome back to the show. This is episode number 684. My thanks goes out to all of our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners of the WCY Podcast. Without your help, we can't make this program the way we do it, with the highest quality audio and production value possible. If you'd like to know more about how you can help support the WCY Podcast and trusted Masonic education, head on over to our website, WCYpodcast.com, click on Support the Show, and check out the various options. We've also got a shop, various other projects that you can click through on the website, and if anything there suits your fancy, you should know that all monies go right back into the production of this podcast and Masonic education. So thanks again for any of your considerations. My thanks goes out to, again, Alexandria Washington Lodge, who had me do a presentation on the 15th of this month, and, of course, Masonic Con Kansas, Alex Powers, his wife and family, who did an amazing job with Masonic Con Kansas. I'll have a little bit of a recap briefly in the middle of the program. Because I had just come home from Kansas, I was not able to attend Steve Harrison's An Imperfect Storm, which happened at Homer Masonic Lodge 199. However, I was able to catch his presentation at Masonic Con Kansas, and it was fantastic. It looks like we're going to get Steve Harrison to come out to the Illinois Lodge of Research annual meeting coming up in October. We'll have details on that coming soon from the Illinois Lodge of Research. October is a busy month, Masonically speaking. We've got, on the 4th, I'm doing a special presentation on life, death, and rebirth, and it's being coined the Ashes to Apron Education Night. And that is happening at Oak Lawn Lodge number 815 here in Illinois. And of course, after that, we've got the Grand Lodge of Illinois, annual communications, and it looks like around the 15th or so, I'll be out at Enlightenment Lodge number 198 in Colorado. So, with all that happening, we've also got our AMD All-State Ingathering happening on October 18th, 2025. And for the first time ever, Illinois will be offering something that no other state has offered. I've been granted permission to head it up and make sure that it happens. I am the Grand Superintendent for Illinois, and we've put together a Masonic passport, just like a Scottish Rite passport of degrees, but instead for the Allied Masonic degrees, just to keep track of the degrees that you've witnessed and any honors that you have accomplished along your way in the Allied Masonic degrees. The only way to get that passport will be at this ingathering. But for now, it is an unofficial thing that Illinois is putting together, and I'm really looking forward to the day. We'll have a few degrees, a speaker or two, plus a great festive board. We're looking at putting on, potentially, if allowed, the Scarlet Cord degrees, or at least one of them. We will put on at least 2 AMD degrees, and hopefully we'll put on some of the ceremonies for our honorifics from the Red Branch of Erie. So if you've never seen those, there are rituals for those. Like if you're a Knight of the Red Branch, an Esquire, all of those things, there are actually ceremonies for those, aside from just handing somebody a certificate and congratulating them with a round of applause. There's actually things that go along with it. So we will hopefully have that as well. More on that as we continue. If you'd like information on that, you can check out the website, AMDIL, like Illinois, .org, amdil.org. And for all things AMD, head on over to the grand website, amdusa.org. After coming back from Masonic Con Kansas, I looked through a bunch of old boxes of publications that I have as I typically do. I collect them, especially fraternal and occult things. And I came across the New Age magazine like we've usually been reading out of every once in a while, except these ones are from the 1980s, and they were about half the size, but with the same amount of content. So they're like a 5x7 size magazine almost, and very cool. But anyway, I found a couple of articles that I thought were really nice and touched on some things that are still relevant today. Recently, I wanted to mention that I was contacted by the authors who we read their article on the last episode regarding loyalty or rebellion. These brothers all came together to write something very awesome, and we've read a couple of their articles in the past as well. Now, one of them in their correspondence with me said, well, what are you into these days as far as research and, things that you're reading? And my reply was that I really like reading a lot of the older articles, because what's happened is you really do see that the concerns of the craft, the interests of the craft, all of those things really haven't changed. It's a pretty fantastic thing. And I think that's notably apparent due to the mission that we have as Masons, which is, of course, never ending. We can't ever be satisfied with how things are. We have to continually move, which is why we are a progressive moral science. But anyway, I read these articles and I thought, wow, still relevant today. So let's check these out. This first one comes from the New Age magazine, which again, from the Supreme Council, the 33rd degree in Washington, D.C. It's called Symbols and Their Meaning to Masons by Dr. Paul L. Helzer, 32nd degree in Bellflower, California. The use of symbols has flourished since the dawn of time. Man has always looked for signs or emblems either from nature or he has devised his own. The Bible, for instance, is full of references to signs. Likewise, the Masonic Lodge has used symbolism for centuries in its rituals and ceremonies, especially for proper recognition of its members, their stations, and rank. To understand fully the proper use of symbols, we must look at how they are formed and created and used in the Old World as well as the present. After the fall of Babel, scholars speculate the symbolism began when strangers of different tongues met to discuss business, trade, or even war. Careful selection of symbols in these cases was a life or death matter. Others suggest that symbols were actually the first language, that ancient hieroglyphics of Egypt were the ultimate achievement of the symbolic communication. The caves in Europe, Asia, Africa, and even North America have disclosed drawings and markings of ancient man using symbols to depict various events, such as hunts, feasts, and weddings. These cave-dwelling drawings and symbols used to depict various activities are similar worldwide. In fact, some of them are almost identical. This means that our ancient ancestors shared a common bond of symbolism. Many of our present-day symbols are actually carryovers from ancient stories, legends, and even ancient philosophies and religions. Although we seldom stop to realize it, or even contemplate the history behind the custom of symbols in our modern sophisticated life. For instance, the Christmas tree stems from the story of Nimrod, who offered that on his death, an evergreen be planted on his grave, that he might forever live. It became the custom for people to bring gifts to the tree, tying them in the limbs or placing them under it to honor the dead. The evergreen now stands as an international symbol and archetype of the winter solstice we celebrate as Christmas. The use of symbols in Freemasonry abounds, and their purpose is to consolidate all the teachings, words, rituals, and lectures of the lessons into one symbol, which represents an entire lecture, principle, or even a degree. When symbols become reverenced for themselves and not for the lessons they represent, they become worthless or even worse. In this way, they can be converted for use by others for less righteous purposes. We as Masons must practice and guard the rightful meanings of our symbols to ensure that they will continue to convey the lessons that we have all learned to cherish. This makes the process of practicing ritual and memorizing lesson extremely important and will shed new light on the importance of symbols. The truth of life will elude us all, as each individual will see only partial truth. Thus, the more you share, the more will come to light. The article, again by Dr. Paul L. Helzer, 32nd degree of Bellflower, California. That last bit was a quote that came directly after the article by David M. Daughtry Jr. Several things I found about the article to be relevant. There is quite a bit of misinformation within the article, the traditions of Christmas trees and evergreens and things. We've now seen where those traditions come from. However, the meaning, regardless of the linear timeline in which these things sort of popped up or were appropriated by philosophies or religions, what have you, does vary. What I think is important here is the idea, the underlying idea of ensuring the survival of the meaning of the symbol, which of course can only truly be understood by having gone through the degrees and putting them into practice, because after all, while the symbol may mean something, it is of itself. It doesn't mean the thing that it is. It's something almost ineffable that must be experienced. Anyway, a good piece, nonetheless. Again, this came out of the New Age magazine, February 1988, and is page 42 and 43. If I can find a copy of it on archive.org, I will of course link back to that so you guys can check it out as well. Now, for a quick recap of Masonic Con Kansas. Masonic Con Kansas was a tremendous event again this year. The first year ever, it was free to all attendees. That's right, you actually didn't have to pay anything to go. You didn't have to pay anything to watch live. It was totally free. How did they do this? Well, it was quite ingenious, actually. Brother Alex Powers decided that beyond Masonic education, we could essentially tie Masonic education to a real mission. And with that, he formed the Masonic Con Kansas Foundation, not to be confused with another foundation. This is the Masonic Con Kansas Foundation, which is a registered nonprofit 501c3, which means all of your donations to it are tax deductible, which was very nice. And it is what drives Masonic Con Kansas now. The wonderful thing about it is the money raised all goes right back into the foundation, which has a mission to preserve Masonic monuments and history for Kansas, which is a wonderful mission in and of itself. So you can check all that out if you go to MasonicConKansas.com. But I will say the first night they moved the festive board to the Friday night before, I was able to take the train down. Why did I take the train? Because it was a fun, nice train ride. I enjoy it. So anyway, went down there, had a great time. The festive board, I was called on about 5 hours before the festive board to say Most Worshipful Brother Darren Kellerman wasn't going to be able to MC the event. So, hey, no refunds. But Robert Johnson had to MC the event. So I was able to MC the event. It went off pretty well. Of course, I'm no Darren Kellerman, but we had a lot of fun nonetheless. We wanted to thank Brother Alex for entrusting the evening in my hands, for, as you might say, and we had a great night. Saturday, the speakers all lined up. It was an amazing time. We were able to catch presentations about memory work. One past Grandmaster did a presentation about secularism of Freemasonry and its importance, which, holy cow, was a very intense and probably my favorite presentation of the day because it had the real philosophical meat of Masonic education, something to chew on all day, if you will. We had a fantastic time with that presentation. Brother Adam Kendall did a wonderful presentation about Masonic history and artifacts. Just a great presentation overall. Really captivated the audience. And the audience was very much asking questions and engaged. So, great presentation as well. Illustrious Brother Stephen L. Harrison presented on The Imperfect Storm, his book that just came out. You may have gone to see his presentations. He's got about 3 or 4 different versions of this presentation, which all are a little bit different depending on what we want to know about this particular topic, which is, of course, the undisclosed, never-before-seen documentation regarding the Morgan Affair. And depending on your lodge's knowledge base on the Morgan Affair, a few different levels, if you will, of that presentation. He gave a great topic and a great discussion. People were asking questions. It was awesome. Brother Alex Powers got up and did a presentation that I had only seen once before for a Lodge of Research presentation he did for Kansas Lodge of Research, I believe. Although it may have been for the Rubicon, I can't remember. My apologies. However, Brother Alex talked about the mysterious death of a particular Mason in the Kansas City area and the mystery that surrounded it. Then we had Brother Ryan Spencer, who had a great presentation with examples of education that he's been able to provide his Masonic Lodge. A lot of great examples and really driving home the idea of collaborative thought and effort in group settings and the power of the thirst for Masonic education. Finding a question and then finding information and formulating answers, and then later on following up to see where those things aligned with truth and where they might not. It was a really great presentation, but he took us through several examples, all of which I found to be very enlightening. Wrote down my own questions and in fact inspired me to write him a subsequent email to ask him to check into something that I've been wondering about for quite a long time. So overall, a great day of Masonic education. They closed out the day with a band and things at nighttime with an auction. But anyway, a great time. I very much want to also thank their host venue, Rosedale Lodge number 333, which of course is Brother Ryan Spencer's, Worshipful Brother Ryan Spencer's lodge. He is the current worshipful master there, and he did a wonderful job. And yeah, just, I can't say enough about the event, guys. If you get the chance to go. Again, it's not far. It's right in the middle of the Midwest, kind of not far from either side of the country if you wanted to go. Very laid back, very cool. And I just wanted to, again, thank everybody for putting it together and taking the time and the effort to present out there in Kansas. All right, next up is another piece from the New Age magazine, Scottish Rite, Southern Jurisdiction, USA. This comes from May of 1987, so just a little bit before the last one. And you might remember what I said about things that concern Masons seem to always concern Masons, so we either haven't solved the problem or it continues to be an issue, right? Well, this one is called Motivation is a Must. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, this is probably going to be one of those cheeseball leadership articles, and that's just really not my style. It's not what I like to put on this show. I want something more engaging, a little bit more thought-provoking, and of course, relevant. Well, imagine my surprise when I found that it was all of those things. So here you go. Motivation is a Must, by Ronald A. Brinkman, 33rd degree. He was the Grand Secretary at the time of the Grand Lodge of New Mexico. And he says, motivation implies movement. It means the difference in getting up and doing something rather than just sitting there and doing nothing, or letting someone else do it. That is apathy and indifference. Webster defines motivation as causing or having the power to cause motion, an impulse from within. If we feel as we say we do regarding our fraternity, let's do something rather than just talk about it and appoint a committee to report back next year and the next. Some time ago, then Chief Justice Warren Burger, in addressing the American Bar Association, quoted the great Masonic writer and jurist, Dean Roscoe Pound of the Harvard Law School, as saying in 1906, quote, "The courts of the 20th century cannot operate on the laws of the 19th century." End quote. My brethren, are we so operating? This fraternity cannot live and thrive on the stories of its great and glorious past. Let's say that one more time for this reading. This fraternity cannot live and thrive on the stories of its great and glorious past. That's the line that said, hey, we need to read this on the podcast. Let's continue. If we do, we may be not long for this world. Pessimistic, you say? Well, perhaps a little. But let me tell you that for many years I have been traveling for Freemasonry. Much of my time has been and is still spent with officers and members of the lodges, not just with those who direct and govern the policy of our Grand Lodge. I think I see it as it really is, not as how we would like it to be. I have seen the problems at the grassroots level, and that is where we had better get the job done. If our efforts have failed in the past, perhaps we are fortunate. Now we know some of the things not to do. North Carolina is one of the jurisdictions where gains were continuing and conditions appeared healthy. A past Grand Master, William Hooks, in addressing the shrine, gave two reasons for part of their status. One, minimizing the secret aspects of our order to the public, and secondly, increasing the unity and mutual cooperation between craft masonry and the appendant bodies. He said that the latter is a must. Many brothers have been active in and honored by one or more of the various bodies that predicate membership on the symbolic lodge. However, many such brethren are too busy to lend their time, talents, and efforts and attendance at functions at their mother lodge, from whom their organizations derive candidates. In contrast, a Grand Master of California, scheduled several area meetings throughout his state, to which were invited the Master Masons who had been raised in his ear. At each meeting, the Grand Master explained the relationship between the Grand Lodge and the Constituent Lodge, and covering the activities and programs of the various committees of the Grand Lodge. He also gave each group a brief history of Masonry in that jurisdiction, and then advised them as to their duties and responsibilities to their lodge and to their brethren in Freemasonry. Apparently, these new brethren were eager to learn more of our craft, as in many cases the meetings were prolonged by several questions asked of the Grand Master. When a new Mason is motivated to learn more about our organization, often some lodge's officer or Grand Lodge officer has been directly responsible. The need for interested candidates is always with us. It always has been. If every petitioner was as enthusiastic as we would have him, there would be no hue and cry about declines, attendance lapses, and gaps in Masonic education. The problem, then, is to extend our circle of light further into the multitude of our membership. One of the best ways to do this is by example. Let our light really shine in all places and at all times. May we wear our white lambskin aprons symbolically 24 hours a day. As stated by Most Worshipful Brother Hooks, quote, "We should tell the world what Freemasonry is and what it teaches, what it stands for, and we should get the message across to every Mason in every grand jurisdiction." End quote. A few years ago, Right Worshipful Brother Claude Austin, past Grand Master of Texas, commented, quote, "Let's put some of this talk into action. We need action. I'd rather see a sermon than to hear one any day. I'd rather one would walk with me than merely show me the way. I can soon learn how to do it, if you will let me see it done." End quote. Success in the business world is based on motivation. These same factors can be applied to Masonry, where the wages are satisfaction, pride in a job well done, the inner glow of personal accomplishment, and something good done for one's fellow man. Efficiency is a dandy word for the other fellow, but let's put on that hat ourselves and start where we should start, with number 1, me. All the Masonic education and candidate training available will not help if we, at a personal level, do not implement it in those lodges which think they have neither the know-how nor personnel to get the message across, and so take the easy way out and do nothing. Sometimes these lodges feel alone and not really an integral part of our Masonic family. Change in this area is a must. The results count, not oratory. Efficiency takes imagination. Imagination goes hand in hand with initiative. Imagination is not necessarily being far out and impossible. Imagination can be the difference between routine and real progress. Originate and invent ideas, and then give them a real try. Nearly everything in our modern world today is the result of imagination. Technology, medicine, spaceflight, communication. That which is now in use was once only imagined. Action is the key word. And enthusiasm is necessary to create action. Let's get a piece of the action. Let's create the action, not wait for it to come to us. Let's stop talking high-sounding phrases and do something now. Well, a very, for me anyway, inspiring piece that echoes some of the sentiment given by Dwight L. Smith and maybe even the Knights of the North's response to that original piece in their book, A Laudable Pursuit. Well, how much of that article actually speaks to us today? Certainly in the summer months leading through June and July, there's a lot of what I call Masonic apathy. Because lodges go dark, the attendance at lodges who do not go dark really dwindles. Brethren fail to remember that a Masonic lodge is the people, not the building, and without the people, the building doesn't really matter. We have to go to these meetings. It's why we became Masons. But why should you go to the meeting? Well, we have to get in action. We have to do things ourselves sometimes to be self-starters. And it's so imperative that we do this. A Mason would do these things. I dare say somebody who isn't a Mason in their heart might shirk and say, well, it's too hard, or there's nothing there for me. Now, I'm sure in some cases, because I've seen it myself personally, that there really isn't a market for the Masonry you might be looking for. And in those cases, it might take some time to find a community of brothers or a lodge that might meet and offer something you were looking for. We talked about this on last week's Masonic Roundtable. I highly recommend you guys check that conversation out. It was really about the lodge experience versus the meeting and why that matters. And we talked a little bit about value proposition, not to get all businessy about it, but it was the conversation and it was very relevant. Now, the value proposition, TLDR, or, too long didn't listen or watch, I think the main takeaway from that episode may have been something about a value proposition doesn't always mean high dues for highfalutin things at your meeting. You don't always have to have high dues in a TO meeting. A lodge experience comes in at every socioeconomic level. It's about the experience the brother has at the lodge. If it's positive, he'll come back. But you also have to drive that enthusiasm. You have to drive the want to come back, and you have to really have an offering to give that brother a reason to come back. So I side with this article and say, let's get to work. Get out there and do something. Before I leave you, I want to once more thank our contributors, fellows, producers, and legacy partners. If you're out there and you're thinking, hey, how can I help support this trusted source of Masonic education? Well, head on over to our website, WCYpodcast.com. Explore the website, check out all the cool free stuff that we offer that we've paid for already, and we just put it out there for free because that's what we did it for. We raised the money, we did a project, like the Manly P. Hall remastered lectures. That's right, we remastered them. You can go listen to some lame, fuzzy version on YouTube, or you can download them right from a Google Drive that have been remastered and sound better than they've sounded since you were perhaps in the front row listening to Manly P. Hall himself. How did we do that? Through your support. So everything goes right back into the show. I want to thank you guys so much for listening, for coming with me on this journey, and we'll talk to you all next week. And until then, stay on the level. For Whence Came You, I'm Robert Johnson. Take care.
You've been listening to Whence Came You, a Masonic podcast featuring research papers and discussions related to Freemasonry with your host, Brother Robert Johnson. Be sure to join us for our next edition.
WCY Media.
Well, you guys beat me as not the